Hey, I'm Chris Woodward, Executive Editor for Sport Fishing. Welcome to the Women in Fishing podcast. My guests today are Captain Leiza Fitzgerald. She's a retired saltwater fishing guide out of Sarasota, Florida, and she is the current director of Coastal Conservation Association's Florida Star Tournament. Leiza also has competed in multiple tournaments and served as a fishing instructor. Mandy Uhrich, also known as the Bass and Biologist, she's the Habitat Program Administrator for Minnesota's Department of Natural Resources. She's a freshwater fishing guide, conservation educator, speaker, and TV co-host. Welcome, y'all.
Hey.
I think that might be the longest introduction I've had so far. How many hats do y'all wear? Really? I mean, come on. The topic of today's discussion on this podcast is conservation, which is a super important topic for our current world as well as our future world, what we leave our children. And we're going to talk about the importance of conservation and how best to teach and reinforce best practices among female anglers and anglers of any gender. So, Mandy, tell me a little bit about the fishing you currently do.
I'm a freshwater fisherman predominantly. I fish multiple different species across the entire North America, both open water and ice fishing. I guide, I guest guide, and I also fish tournaments, both singles events, pro-am, team events.
Okay. And Leiza, what kind of fishing are you doing these days?
Well, I predominantly fish saltwater inshore. I'm targeting species that, tarpon, snook, redfish, trout, triple tail. I do and have migrated over into freshwater fishing for bass, some of our non-native species like peacock bass, cichlids, and have been doing just anything that screams a drag is game in my book. And I am still doing some selective guiding, and much like our other guest, I do donate trips for charity to raise money for conservation.
Okay. And so when and how, Mandy, did you get involved in conservation? I'm assuming that kind of started with your whole biology course of action. Tell us a little bit about that.
Correct. I have actually dedicated my entire education and 21 years professionally to conservation as being a biologist. So it's not just something I do from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. Obviously, this is something I'm passionate about, but spills over to everything else that we do, because I really do believe that it's every individual's responsibility for conservation. And once you get involved at whatever level or whatever interests them, it just continues to grow. So literally, that's all I do. So
nonstop conservation. That's cool. Okay. Leiza, how did you get into conservation work?
My dad and my mother both were involved in conservation, and my parents got me involved in it as a tool. So a tool to improve our fisheries, a tool to improve our species in the woodlands. So hunting and fishing, if you practice conservation, definitely can be something that helps to improve not only your overall experience with those types of sports, but also then being able to have sustainability in the different species that I love to target. I'm going to have to say that Jacques Cousteau had a really big part for me in my fisheries love of conservation, and I always believed going to school, I was going to be a marine biologist. And Mandy, I have to tell you, my dad and my mom both told me, you will, honey, you're going to struggle financially, possibly being a marine biologist. So you might want to think about a different career. So I did a minor in marine biology and actually took on marketing and public relations as my full career. And I have always had a passion. Actually, I've been deemed in Florida the queen of conservation here in Florida. So it's been a lifestyle. That's how I grew up. We never kept everything. We practiced conservation. We practiced sustainability. So it's just been as much, like Mandy said, it's 24/7 for me. It's not just my career. It is everything I do on the weekend. It's everything that I preach to my children, to my clients, to my friends. And I will tell you, I've lost clients, I've lost friends over my passion for conservation because a big, beautiful snook, she's a spawning female. So why are we keeping that beautiful top of the slot fish? Let's let her go and keep a smaller fish. And the same way with redfish and some of our other species.
Right. Mandy, what are some of the current conservation projects that you're really proud of participating in right now?
I'm really blessed for what I do for work from 8 to 4 with the Department of Natural Resources. I touch a little bit of everything. So not only forest, but prairie and wetland and fisheries and aquatics. Something that would closely relate back to what we're talking about today is the work that I do with AMAs. So AMAs are aquatic management areas. In the state of Minnesota, there's 70 plus of them. And they cover about 770 miles of really critical shoreline habitats. So these shoreline habitats don't only protect the bodies of water themselves, but also the habitat and all the way down to, our microbes and flora and fauna in those areas. So they're really, really critical. There isn't very many of them. It's one of our highest priorities. And I really enjoy that type of work, working with all of our fisheries biologists in those.
Cool. What about you, Leiza?
I think with our organization, the habitat restoration that we do, such as renourishment of the oyster bed and oyster bed reefs, we're replanting millions and millions of clam. Both bivalves actually filter up to 50 gallons of water a day. And what's critical right now is our water quality here in Florida. Many of our estuaries are suffering significantly. So we find that these bivalves are really significant in getting them reestablished in areas where we've lost them. Apalachicola is in complete collapse for oysters, and we're working on programs to reestablish our oysters in the Apalachicola area. We've redone acres of oysters down in the Caloosahatchee area and Punta Rassa area, as well as Charlotte Harbor, and clams in the Indian River Lagoon and Sarasota Bay. That is one initiative, but the other one is our restocking programs. I'm sure nationally you've heard red tide has significantly affected the west coast of Florida. And our organization, CCA Florida, it has worked with Duke Mariculture Center to provide almost 100,000 redfish that we have released and restocked back on the west coast of Florida. And these are that 8 to 10 inch fish all the way up to those larger broodstock size fish, which is that 26 to 32 inch redfish. And we've done anywhere from a 5,000 per county that's been affected. And then we've also done snook and trout. I think that with our organization is the best. But me personally, one of my initiatives that I do on the weekend, which is not part of CCA, but they do support me in it, is as a competitive angler and a captain, I am working with many, many tournaments to get them to stop from harvesting and killing redfish and other species to win a tournament. And let's do live weigh-ins where I have big tanks. I set up with these big tanks. They bring their fish in alive. I put those fish in the tanks, and then I take them back out to the saltwater and release them in the areas where they were captured from. And on the East Coast, I've been doing this about 3 years on my own. We've done over 1,000 brood. That's that 26 to 27 inch fish in a tournament. We've done over 1,000 redfish on the East Coast of Florida, and we're close to 500. I've just started the last year and a half on the West Coast of Florida, and we're over 500 fish on the West Coast of Florida. So for me, that personally is my favorite.
Yeah, I have to key in with that. I think that's really interesting. We forget because all of our tournaments here are live weigh-in. It doesn't matter, what the is. And actually in the last 5 years, we've really pushed hard to change from actually having fish moved and brought in and stressed out and relocated for us, because there's so many tournaments. There's a lot of pressure here, especially where I live. So they're doing more of the catch, photo, and release. So they're instantly put back directly where they're taken out. There's no stress on them. They're not live well. They're not, 10 to 60 miles away from where they're taking. I love that. Yeah, that's part of it, right? Like you can still do what you want to do, but getting people, because they still want to have that weigh in, or they still want to hold a fish in front of a crowd to take it to a more of a live situation where people can watch live as people are weighing in, and you still have the photos. But that's been a huge change, and one of those things that was a big barrier to get over. But realistically, when you have thousands of tournaments in the state on all these bodies of water, different species, it was just too hard on those fish, and people got it. Even the everyday angler agreed instantaneously, like, hey, this is a really good idea. And that led to being able to open up a little bit more on permits and number of bodies of water, because the conservation of the fish themselves would be taken first and foremost. So
yeah,
it's awesome.
That's kind of the offshore model for saltwater. For inshore, the challenge has always been having a tank that you can keep the fish alive in, that is adequately aerated and has the right combination of salinity and all those other factors that the saltwater fish need to revive. So it is interesting. Saltwater is coming along in that same way that freshwater kind of took the reins a number of years ago. And so that's all good stuff. What's the key conservation message that y'all are trying to teach anglers? If you could narrow it down to one thing, Mandy, what would that be?
I'm going to defer and let Leiza go first. I got to think on this one for a little bit. I'm going to narrow it down to one.
All right.
So if I were going to whittle it down to one, everything in moderation. So sustainability is really what I'm trying to share with people. If you're going out fishing, I'm not preaching don't ever take a fish. What I'm preaching is being conscientious about what you take. Are you going to prepare it that night for dinner? Don't take, if the limit is 2 redfish per boat or 5 trout, you don't need all that fish, because putting it in the freezer, I can tell you, having roommates when I was growing up, I would find things in my freezer and it was frozen fish and it could have been there for 2 years. So, don't be wasteful. So I think sustainability, or everything in moderation, is really like what I preach. But, and in line with that is also then your handling techniques of that particular any species that you're catching, because even though you may release it and see it swim off, if you have not handled that fish properly, if you put your fingers up in its gills, or if you squeezed it tight, or if you've held it out of the water longer than you can hold your breath, then that fish might swim away, but you aren't going to see it after it rolls over and perishes. Right. I think that's my sustainability and how you handle your fish.
Yeah, I wanted to get into best practices too. So, if you want to mention, several of the things that come to mind first. I mean, for me in particular, and this is something that I look out for every time that I write an article, or solicit photos or shoot photos, is if for whatever reason I need to take a large fish out of the water, I'm holding it horizontally, I'm supporting all of its internal organs. I'm not hanging it up to weigh it. And that's kind of my big thing about best practices. I don't want to see a photo like that. I'm not going to publish a photo like that. Mandy, do you want to talk a little bit about your key conservation message?
Invasive species are a really big thing, above and beyond. Leiza, you nailed it, honestly, with how to care for them, to be, conservation minded. But invasives for us, we have all these rules and regulations set in place, but the education about it, and the crazy part is how well everybody's caught on. They can see this is happening in real time. Giant changes are being made in these bodies of water due to invasive species. It could be zebra mussels. It could be spiny water. It could be plants that are affecting people who not only like to swim and fish, and it's not in a positive way. So we're really conscientious, over the top with education with all of those means. I think is really cool. But the second one too that I like that Lisa touched on, and that's a hard one for us too here in Minnesota. Everybody likes to eat fish. Nobody has the problem with only keeping their limit, but to really hit it home, let's say walleye. Minnesota's known for walleyes, right? We have a regulation that you can keep 1 over 20. And people get upset about that, because they want these big fillets. But the understanding and going back and teaching them that that's, that 20 plus inch walleye is a female, and she's, 18 years, one of the best egg producers we have. That's why we have these rules and regulations in place. Yeah, great. It makes for, a really big fillet and a nice meal, but you're better off taking, smaller fish for consumption wise and putting these back so we do have those fish in the future.
And Mandy, you are spot on that, because I always say, you're not just taking one fish. When you take that big spawning female, you're taking millions, because she will never spawn again.
But I think with that being said, on multiple species, sometimes people really get it, and I think they appreciate it more. We can sturgeon fish in the state of Minnesota, and that's the sturgeon themselves is so amazing, and how they spawn and reproduce and go to the lake and come back to the river. And when you have people out there and you let them know that this fish is only going to come up this river maybe 3 or 4 times in its entire life, and it's probably 60 to 80 years old, they instantaneously take better care of that fish, right? Or same deal, if you tell them that female walleye is going to spawn 50,000 eggs this year, and put her back, and she's going to spawn, for 15 to 20 years, how one fish makes that big difference. So I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Go girls.
Yeah. Great point.
Save the females.
Save the females. That's right. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about best practices too. I mean, I mentioned something, Leiza, you mentioned a couple of things. Do you have any more to add to those?
I think those are pretty much my my go-to soapbox issues. I'm pretty proud, and I think Mandy, also got kind of rounded out our whole thought.
BMP is specifically with different species, right? Not fishing for musky lunge in August when it's super hot, because you're more than likely going to kill that trophy fish. That's a once in a lifetime, right? Taking your clients out on spawning bass and, letting them take and harvest these big, beautiful fish while they're on their spawning beds, and, super, super easy to catch. Same deal with walleye, not going and fishing, say, deep water for them. A lot of people don't understand that, you can catch a walleye in 40 feet of water, but anything taken out realistically over 20 feet, same deal, right? You said, Leiza, it's going to swim down and you're going to see it swim away. That fish is dead, and there's multiple other species. Same deal with crappie. And people don't. The normal everyday Joe doesn't know some of these things, it's a shock when they're like, well, I always go catch crappie in 40 feet of water and ice fishing, and I let them all go. Yeah, you let them all go, but 100% of them are dead on the bottom of the lake. So having that little bit of insight on the species that you're fishing for and how depths and water temps affect them, I think is a big one.
Any other best practices?
Resuscitation, I think, is important. I see so many times, someone will get a big 38, 40-inch snook. They bought it for 30 minutes and they get it up next to the boat. They put it in the net. They get their camera ready, and the fish is in the bottom of the boat. They get their picture. Then they take and they just put the fish back in the water. Preparing that fish to be released in that resuscitation process is critical. I see so many times where someone takes that big fish and just puts it back in the water, where you think it swims off, but it may just go to the bottom and lay there and then perish. Same way with redfish. I watch them all the time, and then they belly up. And then you have to tap them or touch them with the end of the rod, and they'll upright themselves and off they go. But if you will just take a few minutes and hold the fish by the codsole, support them under the gills. Don't put your fingers in the gills, but support them under their belly or right below the gills, and move them back and forth in the water, back and forth, not back and forth in this direction, back and forth this way, but back and forth in a swaying motion instead of a back and forth. When you pull a fish backwards, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mandy, but if you pull a fish backwards, the water's going backwards over their gills, and that's really not good for them. I remember Old Man in the Sea, you drag your marlin backwards to drown them. So, if you're pulling a fish backwards, it really isn't good for them. So making sure that the water is going through their mouth and over their gills instead of coming backwards through their gills, just giving them some slight moving back and forth until you feel them swim out of your hands. But don't just, I watch people just toss them in like footballs. You don't want to do that.
No.
Lean over the side of the boat, and you think, in deep water, oh, I'm tossing them over like a football because I'm getting them deeper in the water. No, I liken it to us running a 20-mile marathon, and then we only have a quarter of a mile of this caged area that we have to run through, and there's hungry lions in there. So we're not going to run very fast through there. But when we release a fish, there are predators everywhere. Even if it survives and is alive, it cannot get away from predators. I oftentimes watch sharks and porpoise and the smaller little juvenile fish, the cormorants. All these things feed and hang around your boat just because they know you're going to release a fish that's less than healthy. So resuscitation, I think, is critically important.
Okay, great. Well, now, do both of y'all see a lot of women anglers at tournaments and on your boat in terms of guiding women? Mandy, how about you?
No, I don't. And I've been tournament angling in this, for 20 plus years. I have seen in the last probably 6 years in the state of Minnesota a little bit more. In the leagues that I fish or the series that I fish, I'm starting to see dads and daughters or husbands and wives. Very rarely do I see an all-female team, which breaks my little heart. But there again, I think it's coming. It's moving in the right direction for us in Minnesota. We just got high school fishing teams in the last 6 years. So I compare that to what happened with shooting sports in the nation and getting those kids involved at an early age. That's what's happening here, and giving them an opportunity that they might not have just from home, right? Like they didn't come from a fishing family, perhaps, and to get them in there competitively, with coaches, and they're learning all of these things right away. And there's a lot of more females in the high school side that are coming up in Minnesota. It's good. But on the professional side, or even the fun side, I don't see a lot of female tournament anglers. I know of maybe 5 besides myself in the state of Minnesota. But we have something that I'm super passionate about. It's called Bull. It's Becoming an Outdoor Woman program.
Leiza, I know that in Florida, there are definitely a lot of women who are fishing. And I know you've also been involved with International Women's Fishing Association, which had its start in Florida and is still very popular. It started back in the 60s or the 50s, I believe.
Yes, I've been an instructor for Ladies Let's Go Fishing. I was one of their first female instructors. And Becoming an Outdoor Woman, I was also an instructor for them, and now involved with the International Women's Fishing Association. There are some really great programs. I'm also an instructor for Salt Strong, and we have a women's program in Salt Strong as well. It's Women in Fishing 101, which I am the coach for that. It is really unique to see the amount of women. I don't know if you will ever recall the name, but Captain Marilee Dunn was my fishing partner. And Marilee and I were I believe the second all-ladies team to fish competitively in the redfish circuits and go to national championships and earn titles in the national championships. We were the only ladies team, all-ladies team, to ever be ranked in the All-Stars for redfish. We ranked number 10 in the All-Stars for the ESPN Redfish Tour. I am seeing more and more women. And when I go to speak at seminars, I will tell you, I do about 50 to 60 speaking engagements a year. In fact, I'm doing one and being involved in a speaking engagement this weekend at Boaters Exchange in Rockledge. We've just had some really cool opportunities every speaking engagement that I go to. And each year that I do this, I see more and more women, and actually more and more clubs that are sprouting up that are totally all women's group. There's the Nature Coast Lady Anglers. I mean, there's just so many Real Mermaids, Pink Ladies. There's all these really amazing groups of women who want to fish and want to be fishing either on their own, or instead of catching sun, they're catching fish, and they're spending more time with their spouses because they are understanding fishing and enjoying it. So I think Betty Bauman does a great job with Ladies Let's Go Fishing and giving you that first introduction, but they have to get engaged in more follow-up to that. And that's what we try to do with the Salt Strong course. And gosh, the more and more tournaments that I go to, the more lady anglers I see in the tournaments.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, in Florida.
Yeah, I know, it's awesome.
Come on down and go fishing with me. Mandy, when you come to Florida, you need to come and go fishing with me.
I do.
Yes, I want to come up there and go walleye fishing.
Yeah, me too. Count me in. And that's
Yeah.
that's the key right there is networking, is meeting other women. And the thing that you mentioned about groups and that type of thing really helps to retain women anglers, because when we have a bonding experience, it generally is a lasting bonding experience. And, I think conservation too is an area where, I hate to stereotype women, but I think in some ways we like causes that help our environment. We're a little bit more keyed into that kind of thing. Empathetic. There she goes. That's the word. So
yes, ma'am.
So I think conservation can help women stay involved in fishing too, and joining organizations like CCA, Coastal Conservation Association, as well as I know Mandy, BASS has a membership organization for conservation as well, Bass Conservation Network, I believe it's called. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and they just actually take a minute. So BASS last year, the lake cleanup project, they just completed one this at Cherokee down in Tennessee right before the Bassmaster Elite event there. 12,000 pounds. So the elite anglers, BASS staff members, AFTCO, and a bunch of local BASS fishing organizations get together and do this big lake cleanup. So the idea now is to do one at every single event where a BASS major event is being held at. So that'll be really interesting. I mean, that's new for them just within the last year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any other topics that you feel like you want to cover that we haven't talked about yet?
Fishing and getting on the water has become so much more accessible to women than it ever has been in the past, and acceptability. I think we are seeing, we always have a tendency, myself included, we always have a tendency to say, oh, the men this and the men that. But I am seeing such a change or a drift in the perception that men have now of women in fishing. And it's very encouraging to see so many of the men being more willing to take their wives and get them out on the water, and being able to say, yeah, honey, take the boat, or, women going, I can do this. I'm going to buy my own boat. I can do this. Kayaks, paddle boards, all of these different types of watercrafts have made it so much easier for women to learn to fish and to get on the water, because it's easier for them as one person. If they're going by themselves, a paddleboard, a kayak is so much easier than backing a boat down the boat ramp. That's my favorite thing to do.
it's been one of those daunting issues, right? Let's talk about adding kayaks. That's been huge, right? Accessibility, just for the simple fact that, yeah, I own 3 boats. I own a truck. I own 2 shops to hold the 4 boats that I own on top of everything else. There's a money issue, right? There's electronics. It's daunting. It's overwhelming. That's one of the fun things when I do have it, not just females, but the guys get a kick out of it too. Like, I've got a gas pedal and a 250 V8 Merc on mine, so we go fast, but teaching them, the electronics and giving them some confidence in the difference between driving a tiller, say to a wheel boat. We do offer classes too, and that's my favorite one to teach is at the boat ramp, because I think a lot of women get thrown into that and they get frustrated and embarrassed and they never want to try it again. Where they're, we give them the setup, we give them the time, we give them all the little, cheater methods on how to do that accurately. And that's a big one I'm like, don't tell your husband until, that you came to the class. I want you to call me though when you back that boat down that ramp for the first time and you do it perfectly. He gets out and does, huh? That's the best, right? Just like guiding, right? Like seeing that person get excited because of the education that you gave them, catching that fish, having that experience, and finding that confidence in any which way or form that it comes in is what it's all about. So
the bottom line is stay determined. There are people out there who are going to help you. Don't give it up. Keep plugging and you'll get it done. So, all right, ladies. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And this is Chris Woodward, Executive Editor for Sport Fishing. Have a great day.